what he said.
You may see us in the audience, by the way.
No.
Okay, good. I'm gonna drink my coffee.
Well, I appreciate you bringing us.
How was that?
Hey there, how you doing?
Is it live? All right, here we are, we're live. Welcome to the August 24th meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We will get started with a moment of silence to express our gratitude for being here and serving our community and to focus on the task at hand. Okay, so we have a new agenda, a new format for the agenda. I don't know if y'all saw it. It's quite long this evening, so we're going to try to keep everything as brief as we can. When you do your presentations, if you could do an executive summary, and then we can take our time to ask questions as needed. So the agenda, if you'll notice, is organized a little bit differently than it has in the past. So what I've done is I went through the charter for the committee, and I went through our duties, our responsibilities as a committee, and so I used those as the headings. So one of ours is to advise on current events, activities, and leagues. And so all of those points are the different duties that we have as committee. So that's the different organization for the agenda. And so first item is the approval of minutes. Let's see, did anyone see anything with the minutes? I saw a couple of items. Do we need to include the attendance on the minutes? Do you know?
I did last year, but I don't know.
I don't know. I think typically you do. Typically. Okay, so I think Peter wasn't here last time, but everyone else was, correct? Everyone else? Renee was here.
Yes.
Peter was not here, so Lisa stepped in. So and then Jay and Tony. And then I just went through it a little. I just had a couple. They're so thorough, so thank you. And then softball, it said neither advanced to the state's, I think it's tournament, right? For the, I don't know if you have it in front of you. I can give you this copy if you want it.
Okay, sure.
And on the Kinley Nettles master plan update, it said that summer camp is #1 priority. Second priority was baseball and soccer fields. I didn't know if those were the priorities of the department or city council. They're not in the minutes. Do you know, Jay?
I think that was our.
Yeah.
The department?
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe we can
But
clarify.
I can clarify that's
that.
the department's priority.
Okay. Because we were talking about the meeting with city council and that too, so just to clarify. And then down below, the budget update. The capital accounts, it talked about the RV pad at 12 Mile Park. It says for the campground host, but it's actually the park host. There's no campground there. So
Okay.
there's been some confusion in the city, so I want to make sure that's clear. That's the park host. At least if that's better, I'll give you a copy of this afterwards to update it. And then on the Clemson Park update, we talked about, I was asking about the biocell to help with the drainage, and Tony commented that we can't do anything like that. So just to correct that in there. And then that's it. Anyone else have comments or questions on the minutes? On the agenda or the minutes from last meeting? Do we have
Only thing I saw, maybe a minor thing, is that the bingo would start in August. Doesn't start till September, right?
Correct.
That was the only minor thing I saw in there.
All right, I can go ahead and make all those changes.
Great. And then I think you'll send those to Jay, and Jay will submit them to the city, correct? Perfect. Thank you, Lisa, for taking such wonderful minutes and for stepping in tonight, too. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? A motion.
A second.
So is there any discussion, questions? No. Is there a second motion to approve the minutes as written? A second? Or the second by Bill? Perfect. So minutes were approved with slight changes, correct? All right, so moving on to the current events, activities, leagues, lessons. We have a lot of updates from staff. We'll start with, hello, Tony. Sonny's just joined us. We're right now doing the updates on athletics. First item is to meet Shannon Knight. Welcome, Shannon. Maybe you can come to the microphone and introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm Shannon Knight. I came from the city of Seneca. I worked there for 12 years as the athletic director, and then I left there in 2017 and started my own business, and I'm still currently doing that. And I'm just excited about the opportunity to work with you guys, with the city of Clemson, and with the community, and just excited about the future of what this community holds, and especially in the youth sports and the adult sports that we offer at the Parks and Recreation Department. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful to meet you. Welcome. Right. The next item is a summer sports recap. Jay is back in person.
Yeah, I'm back in person. Yeah. We had a very successful summer with our athletic teams. You know, not only did we win the first state championship ever in baseball, is they with Mississippi and won the World Series in the 8U and the 12U, and it was hot there. So they got through August the 4th, I think it was. But yeah, and then our 10U baseball was second place in the district. The 12U softball was third in the district. So we had, like I say, a very successful summer.
Wonderful. Thank you for your leadership. Any questions? Discussion? All right. What about fall programs, Jay?
Fall programs are wide open now. As some of you know, we've got right at 500 in soccer, 140 in with baseball and softball, around 80 in volleyball. We'll have 100 in across the country, so that's over 800 kids in the fall. And we're still registered for adult softball also. So, and as we're practicing out there everywhere. So,
Sure. That is wonderful.
that's, you know, we're COVID protocols outside, we don't have any because, you know, the city ordinance, and outdoors, and then there are some for indoors volleyball, but we hope it doesn't get too bad. So, I mean, like I say, the numbers are at an all-time high. So the people are just wanting to, you know, move ahead. Life if they can.
It's wonderful. Thank you for, I think it's just fantastic how many kids in Clemson and the area that we serve. It's wonderful. Any questions about the fall programs?
I don't even make a comment there. I was at one of the local Nettles Park presentations, and one of the people in the audience said that they were talking about building facilities. They said they didn't see any kids around in Clemson anywhere. And I went, so at that point I looked over at Andy and I raised my hand and I started telling them all the numbers that you've had. I said, I don't know where you're thinking there are not any kids in Clemson. But we've got, at that time, you had, I quoted somewhere like 700 kids signed up for fall sports, not counting what was already in the summer and the spring. And I said, I don't know where you people are thinking, I mean, there's not any kids in Clemson. But we've got, and so I just want to make a point that there were people out there that, and look at the Nettles thing, that think there are no kids here, but they don't see them. I guess they don't come out, they never call the Nettles, but I just want to make a point to Jay that they, that I had, at that point, I had to say something in the meeting, because they were, and I said, Andy, I hope I wasn't not applying at the end. He goes, oh, no, you're fine. So,
The numbers are definitely impressive. If you don't go to Nettles, though, you don't see it.
Right.
Like,
That's
it was
right.
concentrated there, so. All right, no more comments or questions. We'll move on to the next section, which is programming. Lindsay?
I prepared some documents, of course. I'm gonna take this down just so you can hear me okay. My job has so many different facets to it that I wanted to give some information about what I was doing and some feedback from parents. The Art Center and Camp Clemson are gonna kind of go together. So you guys know I ran a summer camp this summer. There's 165 registered students, which is low for us. And we did stop registration because we wanted to keep COVID protocols in place and have 10 kids per group with one counselor, and we isolated them in different areas of the school and then rotated them around. So it was on purpose. We had about an average of 115 kids per week, and we completed all 5 weeks. We did not have to quarantine any groups, which was a great success. We had a really great summer. So from a director's standpoint, it was a success. I had enough staff, which if you know anything about the camp world right now, that was a blessing and a miracle. A lot of people didn't have enough staff this summer. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to staff. But I will say it took a lot of recruitment and it took a lot of work on my part to find people to come and work. So I'm suggesting that we do go up on pay for next year so that I can get a bigger application pool of people, because I will be going back up to 200 kids. And I'm afraid that if I did that, I wouldn't be able to staff properly. Looking forward, after every summer I reflect on, I recover and then I reflect. And I sent out a survey to my parents. It was a little late this year, but I got some responses that I wanted to share. So in this document, it outlines every response, good or bad, for you to look at. So I don't want you to do that now, but if you want to read them later tonight or whatever, that's great. I also did a scoring system, and we averaged pretty good. There were high points and low points, and I always like to do that so I can grow and understand what the kids what the trends are and how they're feeling about camp. One of the biggest things I noticed is they did not like the cheese bread, so we'll be sure to let nutrition know they didn't like the cheese bread at lunch. That was one of the biggest feedbacks, which was funny. Anyways, so thinking about the summer, I was reflecting on our programming, and I was in a meeting with the Art Center. So one of my philosophies personally is I believe in collaboration. So I like to do a great job at my job, but there's people out there who have different skills and things to bring to the table, and I think the best programs come from collaboration. So I'm starting to really work a lot with the Art Center and Joan over there, and we've been talking about how to make camp inclusive and diverse and offer lots of things to the community that Camp Clemson doesn't necessarily have the capability of doing at a day camp. So we came up with the idea of having like components that you can choose from, so half-day options. And I'm not going to go into depth about it, but this is just the preliminary talk. So my dream would be what this is here, this little graphic I made. So essentially you would put together your summer in puzzle pieces. So you could do Camp Clemson the whole summer. We don't want to take that away from people, but if you have a child who's into theater or into sports or into art or into music, that you can pick half-day options, and then we are going to hopefully be able to work in some type of transportation from one to the other. And then it would be like this big umbrella of Camp Clemson along with the Art Center and other people, collaborations in the community, and then we'll all kind of train together and fuel our resources in that way so that we have a sense of community. That's my dream. I love camp, so that's what we hope to do. Because not every kid loves to play dodgeball and laser tag and outdoor sports, so I want to be able to provide other opportunities for them. So I would love this is just a request from me. If there is a person on or two people on the council who would be able to help shoot ideas with this with me, just send me an email. I would love to have some feedback about how we can make that happen for the community and whether you guys feel like that would be an asset. So that's summer camp, the feedback, the idea about the puzzle pieces. And on the back, this kind of, I made up a mock like registration form, anyway, for you to look at. I'm also collaborating with Meredith at the Central Clemson Rec Center. She runs the after school program there and she's wonderful. We're very like-minded about programming and I love working with her. So I shot an idea about doing a drop and shop series with them. So basically the kids will be dropped off at the rec center. Me and my Camp Clemson staff and her after school staff will work together. This is the flyer that I came up with. And we will work together to provide an opportunity for people to drop their kids off and go do whatever. So we're marketing as if you're a mom or a dad and you need some time off, you can go home and take a bath and clean your fridge, or you can go out and whatever. So it's kind of just a time for us to do organized activities with families. And then Picnic in the Park is coming up. So those are the two flyers that I gave you. And I'm also in conversations with the police department and different partners about Halloween and Christmas, because those are kind of fluid since we don't know what's going on right now with transmission rates in our community. So for Christmas, I know I'm skipping a little bit. For Christmas, we are definitely doing the December 7th date. That's something that we decided years and years ago, and we always stick to that date. So if you want to write that down, we would love to have help there and just let you know it's December 7th. And for Halloween, we are discussing right now and haven't decided between the format of Halloween. So are we going to do Street of Treats? And the 2 days we have down for that one would be like the 25th or the 28th. And then College Avenue, we're looking at October 31st or that Monday. So right now it's very fluid. Well, not unfortunately, but there's a football game the Saturday of Halloween. So that complicates the Friday festival thing. So there's a couple roadblocks, but nothing we can't overcome. So I just want to let you know we are thinking about those and collaborating with the police department. It's really important for us that they feel comfortable with our plan and that we're able to keep everything nice and safe, because there's a lot of people moving and safety will be number one for that. We do have two themes for Christmas. So what I did is I sent out a survey to everybody who participated in Halloween festival and parades in the past. And I got it, like basically information about what do you think the theme should be, and I gave some ideas, and then what are the days that you think would work well. So I've been trying to get feedback from businesses and people who participated in the past, and the two themes that came up voted on for Christmas were Magic of Christmas and the Parade of Trees. So we're gonna probably go with one of those two, but that's it. I could talk forever about my job, and I don't want to do that because I know you guys have lots of things to talk about, but that's where we're at. Do y'all have any questions for me?
I do.
Yes, Bill.
First off, I was able to visit out at Clemson, at Camp Clemson several times, and Lindsay did a fantastic job as the old camp director. I was very impressed.
Thank you.
She did the kids were having a great time. Things were well run. Staff were involved. Lindsay was involved. But there was a lot going on, and I really was excited for the kids. Excited about it maybe growing. I thought at first I'd never been to a Clemson camp, and it was well done.
Thank you.
I second that.
Did things work out at Edwards very well?
They did, and I meant to say that we were welcomed at Edwards, and it was a wonderful experience there. There are some things about it. That was one of the questions, and you can read that on here, is what worked for the families. A lot of the families were a little not excited about the location from where they are, and there was some feedback about no playground for the younger kids, and that was one of the drawbacks for the little kids, is there was no playground. But overall, the staff there was awesome. The cleaning staff that helped us was great. The food service was good there. We even had Officer Chapman, who is the resource officer. He was very involved, and it was a great atmosphere there for sure.
As a teacher from there, I was very happy that they were able to do a good job for you. I was very happy for them. But I just wanted to say that thank you it was good. I was really very good with everything you had out there. I was very impressed and very happy. I wish I could have been more involved, but I'm kind of retired from all that.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for coming, and I appreciate y'all's support. Some of you guys came out to the parade also, which we had, and I appreciate the support of everybody.
Okay, second Bill's comments, and also wanted to mention I appreciate the parade that you put together for the baseball players. That was fantastic.
Well, one of the things I was most impressed is that bike day with all those bicycles out there.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
That was impressive. All those kids and those bicycles out there.
yeah.
I was amazed.
Yes.
And just, you know, this idea of the half days is fantastic, right? Because again, just thinking about my kids growing up, there were many times where I registered them for Camp Clemson, but they wanted to do an art center program, or they wanted to do some sports camp, and just, you know, so I just paid for Camp Clemson, and then would have to my own, you know, leave at lunchtime and go shuttle around to do this to make, you know, something happen for them. So having this as sort of a one-stop shop without parents having to leave on their lunch break, I mean, it would be incredible. It's a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you two collaborating with different organizations around the city and in Central. I think that's fantastic. Definitely.
Thank you very much. I'll continue the good work.
Thank you, Lindsay. The next item is the director, Jay. You already talked about athletics, but now your role is going to be shifting with the new athletic director. So do you have any reports on how your activities or your role will change specifically?
Well,
No, you're still in the transition process, but
I haven't been back for too long, maybe a week and a half. But anyway, I've been working with Andy on some possible grants for some projects that we have that are, you know, possible. We had our Rotary Park dedication on Saturday. There was 30 or 40 people that came out from the neighborhood.
great.
That was a project that I worked on, and we were going to have the ceremony last year, but COVID hit, and we had to put that off. But anyway, that park is complete, and they want to thank Tony and his staff for, you know, maintaining that park as one of our 14 parks. But anyway, yeah, it's been, you know, working with Shannon on getting him involved and with all of our athletics and all. So it will, I'll have different responsibilities coming up, which I'm looking forward to.
Sure, it'll be a transition period of getting Shannon up to speed and
Right.
handing over responsibilities.
Yes, ma'am.
There's any questions or anything else you wanted to add, Jay? I appreciate all the work the athletics, when I forget the discussion that I was in, but Andy said that when you were hired to boost the athletics program, and there's no doubt, no doubt you knocked it out of the park, so
Yes,
that's great.
thank you.
Now you'll have new roles and expanded roles, so thank
Right.
you. All right, next is current facilities, equipment, and supplies. These are gonna be park updates for the most part. Tony, do you mind sharing with us about park updates?
Clemson Park's first on the list there. The RFP for the pump track is going out in September. Paul Russell and Nathan Hinkle with the city engineering, because Chris Shiver has left us, are working on the details for the stormwater plan, which is a level spreader down at the bottom there. But instead of it just being a functional feature, trying to work it into an artistic aspect of the plan so that it's consistent with Paul's plan. And that's pretty much it. All that's going on right now. I do have a quote for cleaning the shelter and the sidewalks and all of that out there. I just need to get back in touch with the contractors.
Any questions about Clemson Park? Okay.
12 Mile. The Hort staff has done a great job working out there, keeping it clean, keeping it running. Dawson, the volunteer, everybody just pitching in, trying to keep on top of things out there. I think the park is a lot cleaner than it was. I think we're staying on top of the facilities, the restrooms, the trash, and everything. A lot of good, positive comments about the appearance of the park. Christie is starting to take reservations now. So when Dawson is there, he is able to facilitate those reservations, which is something that if it happens during the week, we're not necessarily able to do on the weekend. So he's there Monday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. So that's a real bonus there. The automatic gates have been installed, but we're waiting for a few parks before they're fully operational. I don't know exactly what they are. That's something I really can't tell you about, is those gates. But hopefully they'll be in a month or so, and we'll start having the pay-to-play feature out there. The park has been annexed into the city, so we have the full support of the police department now. We have seen a few numbers drop since school started back. Just folks aren't coming out there every day like they were, and even saw a little bit more of a drop when the university started back as well. So a little less alcohol use, which was good. We still get bumps of big, large parties and everything that happen out there, but once the gate goes up, that'll probably diminish some as well. So it's pretty much what's happening at the mile, as we started calling it. So.
We don't have a number of how many people use the park at all. I mean, I know a lot, but we don't have any. There was no counting people or anything back then.
No, I mean, I could, every now and then the volunteer will do a clicker. We've done it for holidays and things like that, but nobody really designated to sit there and click.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for the past, not just some roundup. It was a lot, though, right?
It was a busy summer. I mean, the beach would start getting busy around 10 o'clock in the morning in the high summer, and they would be there till dark 30. So a lot of use in the park. The landing's always used. And Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon is the biggest day. That is the biggest day out there. So we could see a few hundred people just in a Sunday afternoon out there using the picnic areas and beaches. Once we have the gate and maybe someone out there a little bit more established that can get some numbers.
And since it's been annexed, the last meeting we talked about if it was going to be annexed, then are the park hours still the same since it's the core property? Or does it change to the Clemson?
It will change to the Clemson park hours.
Okay.
Yep. And I don't know if we had talked about it last time I was here, but we put the park hour signs up at all of the parks except for 2. So.
Other questions about 12 Mile? The mile?
The mile. Last thing I'll mention is Phil King's class is coming out in September and to start on their project, which is basically they're going to be working on doing a master plan for recommendation for the future of the park. I'll just act like I'm hiring them. They're going to be a firm, and it should be a lot of fun. See what they come up with.
That's great. Thanks for doing the collaboration with the university. I think it's wonderful to have bridges. Seems like it serves everyone, so that's great. Thank you, Tony. Are there other questions about 12 Mile? Friends of the Park.
Okay, Christy's been working on doing some tweaks on our sign-up form. What we found was we started just getting individuals who didn't have really a focused task. So that was going to fall back to me to come up with something like a project, which I don't really have time to do right now. So what we did is just reworked the sign-up form where you sort of come back with an idea of something that you want to do, create your own project in an area that you want to work. So it can work whether the city comes up with a project and we can solicit volunteers, or you actually have something in mind that you want to do instead of sort of randomly signing up for. And we have a large group from the business college that's coming out September the 19th. There's about 35 folks that are coming out. I talked to the director today, and so we're going to meet on site in a couple of weeks, and then they're going to come out and do some cleanup.
At which park?
They're going to do JC to Abernathy, and then that's 35 folks. And then she has another large group, probably about the same size, that we'll work on some other areas with.
Great. That's wonderful.
Peter Hyatt, I got to give a little praise to Peter. He's had his group come out from his neighborhood a couple of times to do some maintenance on Gateway, and they've done a really good job. Very helpful on that park. And I saw you had tree inventory down here, or tree count. I've been talking with the landscape architecture department about doing some internships with them. And we would just sort of have to set up, and we had a nice PRTM intern this summer. But they do it a little bit of a different way. You sort of put a little money towards them to begin with, and then they have a couple of weeks in certain windows that they can have the kids come out and do different projects. But I was really wanting to have these kids work on our tree inventory. Tyler, our GIS guy in engineering, has worked up a really nice mapping system, which we already use for our utilities, and he's incorporated the tree inventory platform into that. So we could just have these students go out with a device and locate GIS and do the different data entry for it, and that would be very helpful to move us towards getting a more complete tree inventory.
So that's in progress with you mentioned with Parks and Rec and with forestry?
Landscape architecture.
Landscape architecture. That's great collaboration. So are they going to do that this fall?
We'll see.
Okay. I think that's fantastic, all the collaboration. It's wonderful. I had in a section of one of our roles as the advisory committee to assist and advise and identifying potential volunteers, but you seem like you might not need our help with some of this. You're doing a lot of contacts yourself.
I could always use help.
Okay.
So yeah, if something wakes you up in the middle of the night, write it down.
Okay. With the Friends of the Park program, has there been much interest from any of the civic organizations, any contacts from the civic organizations in town?
Not yet.
Okay.
I did have a group of cheerleaders from Daniel High School who they were going to come out in August, and they've pushed that, so hopefully that'll happen this fall. But nothing really. I will say that along with the Clemson Park update, the Rotary Club has a plot at the community garden, and along with our gardeners, we've given away about 800 pounds of vegetables this year to the free clinic and to CCC. So those civic organizations are hard at work.
That's fantastic. I was wondering, thinking about potential volunteers, would it be helpful, or is there a need for someone, I don't know if anyone from the advisory committee would feel comfortable if you would want us to reach out to the civic organization to do a presentation of what some of the updates from Parks and Rec, and also to see, to let them know about the Friends of the Park program and see if they would like to sponsor a group or sponsor a project or sponsor a park.
Most definitely. There's a certain time of year, and you guys I'm sure are familiar with it, when I get a lot of the university clubs and organizations that are looking for their community service hours. And I usually get 2 or 3 of those. I can't remember when that happens. It seems like it's right around now. But just some maybe word of mouth or something with some of those organizations. That would be helpful.
Is that, like a civic organization, if they came to you and said they would like to adopt a park and do something to it, clean it or something, or build something on it or whatever, that's something that's open, of course, right?
Mm-hmm. Not so much build. The build would have to go through process of approval. But, like a cleanup type project or, some kind of landscaping, we could very easily set something like that up. It's helpful, though, if they have an idea of where they would like to donate their time and an idea of what they would like to do. We've set up a form, so it has a lot of those types of ideas on there. That keeps us from having to just always facilitate the project.
On the club I'm a member of, we're kind of looking for things to do in the community, and I was going to bring this up as a possibility for them to consider. And I just want to go, what kind of things we'll cross that bridge as we get closer to yes or no with the.
Absolutely, and if you want to have, I'd be glad to come to your meeting and we could brainstorm some ideas or whatever.
Okay.
I've got 2 ideas, just, I'm going to say them before I forget, because I think I thought them last meeting. I have talked to our department here team about doing a service project with y'all, considering we want a service project in the fitness area. Just to throw it out there, one thing that we could look at as a targeted might be something that actually combines the 40 students that are in Phil Gaines' class and us at the end of the semester, so maybe something at 12 Mile towards that November, first week of December, which with the lead time might be something that could be more tangible if there's like a building project we could do. The other, though, when you're talking about the tree inventory, there's a spring DRTM GIS class that Dave White teaches that would be probably pretty good for doing that inventory. It doesn't ever max out over 15 students, so, and it's graduate, undergraduate mix, so it'd be a good pairing out there.
Who teaches it?
Dave White,
I know that.
he's got a joint appointment, but yeah, it's a low enrollment class, but it's real hands-on, and that would be a real good practical application. So
That would be fantastic. In the
don't need
past,
to get to connect y'all. So.
sounds good.
But anyways, in terms of PRTM, they're supportive of the idea, but if we could pitch something really specific, I bet you could get 40 plus faculty and students within our department, plus maybe something that merges with Phil's class.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Sounds like we could have a specific work group focused on it's come up in many, many meetings. And but if Bill, it sounds like you're interested maybe in talking to the Sertoma Club, but I think it's something that we could even reach out to Rotary clubs, involve different departments on campus. So maybe we could have a meeting, a team, a gathering. I'm afraid of the word meeting, a party that we gather ideas, create a presentation to share, generate a list of projects that would just be sign your name to these projects. Just one work session, perhaps. Does that sound like something? So we can plan that. Bill, would you be interested in participating?
Sorry.
Would you be interested in participating in a work group to plan or to think through?
Sure.
Yeah. Lauren, would you be interested?
I mean, I think some of the groups that are going to have like maybe areas of interest. So some of it needs to be, I think, brought by them, not just like a generated list. I think they're going to want to meet, and I think you get more buy-in when you let them kind of spur some of those ideas. Not to say if you have something that you want to see brought to the table, some of your students
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because people have something that they're working on specifically. So that's a great, to leave it open-ended like that. But if there's an organization too, that like, we wanna do a service project, we don't know what to do, so if we had a list of, put your name on this project. And I was looking at programs in other cities, and they have get your group, you sign up for this park, you maintain this park for a year, for example, like you have your Adopt the Road programs, and basically what Peter Hyatt and his neighborhood has done with Gateway Park. So if we could approach civic groups about adopting a park or a section of a park for a year, something like that. So that could be something we could think through in this work session. So separate.
That's really gonna be the biggest benefit of something like this is an adopt program, because it's just the ongoing thing. The single projects are great. They help keep us on track, give us that boost, get back on top of things. But that ongoing project or something is going to be like the tree inventory or this master planning, kind of gets us ahead of the game, so to speak.
I think that'd be great, because we've talked about it a bunch, and I know coordinating volunteers is a huge amount of time to get everything set up. So as much as we can get systematized so it's easier, it's not as much time, that would be great for everyone, I think.
Yeah, that's just something that we're finding. This time of year is really challenging to get random folks and try to plug them into a project and facilitate. Everybody wants to do sort of different things. They don't want to do this. They're willing to do this. It's just a lot of communication and on-site communication. So, yeah.
So the more we can simplify it, streamline it, standardize, or systematize it, it might be easier for everyone. So, and then of course give people the option if they've got a specific program in mind to do that.
Yeah.
Great. All right, we got a work group for that. We'll touch base and get that organized. So. All right, Tony, thank you so much. Let's see. We've gone to the next two. Advised staff. The one other item is the parks maintenance plan. We talked. That was something Tommy had mentioned.
We talked today, and when he came in, it was the end of the winter. He said that is a winter project to do, because with the grass growing and all this, and when we move inside, play basketball, then he can concentrate on that.
That's great. Perfect. That's great. I was just kind of circling around issues that have come up to make sure that they're moving forward. So, any questions about the parks maintenance plan or anything Tony's brought up? I think it's great discussion, and thank you, Tony, for all the collaboration with the university, all that you do to keep our parks going, and thank you. All right. Let's see. The next item is our looking at long range and or master plans for future parks and activities and facilities. The first item is Kinley Horn, Nettles Park Expansion Master Plan. Jay, would you like to speak to that?
The reason that we originally had our meeting on the 19th, but they're making their presentation to City Council on the 18th of October, so we have to back ours up till the 12th, where they will make their final presentation to the committee on the 12th.
Okay. Will that be here?
I'm not sure if it's going to be in person or virtual, but they're planning on being here, City Council 18th. I'm sure of that.
Okay.
I know that City Council talked a lot about their concerns with representation in the sampling. Did they go back and try again at that, or?
I can say, go ahead, Tony.
We had 3 separate meetings outside of the Kinley Horn. We had one at Little John Community Center. We had one at the Chamber of Commerce, and we had one at the Annex. We had maybe 8 people at Little John.
8.
We had 2 people at the chamber, and then we had a pretty good group at Annex, I would say.
And the one at the art center, what do they call it, the museum, that was probably 10-ish people. That was about the most we've had prior to. They had. I was there all of them.
You were.
And the interest at the was the focus at the Little John at the museum place was dog park and pickleball. Dog park and pickleball, and they could care less about anything else. Just about. That's when they spoke up about not needing athletic things because they said there's no kids in Clemson. What do we need kids? That's when I come to that. And but it was they were not well attended. Particularly the second one. I don't know why that one was. And her focus at that one was the disc golf. If I remember, this lady wanted disc golf.
Yep, disc golf, and she had some pretty good recommendations about data gathering,
Yeah, she was pretty good, but then the other guy was just, I think Scott was just there just to see what was going on.
Yeah, he wanted to, I actually liked his idea of having some legacy. He had some Oxendine that he wanted to honor somehow. But, it just continues to bring up the point that one thing is lacking in our parks is that story. We have the Ashley Deering story and the Toddy story, and we have potential for all these other stories as history and legacy that can kind of tie our community together and tie it to the past as a history of our park system. So I thought that was a real good.
The one at the Chamber of Commerce, it was just you and I and Andy and these 2 people. And Andy answered a lot of questions that I did not know about how things worked. And that part was very interesting. I thought he talked about a lot of different areas and stuff that I couldn't remember all the stuff down. But a lot of it I did not realize that's how the city worked on certain areas. And he answered a lot of, we were able just to sit and talk about just stuff, it was very good. And then of course you were at all of them. Yeah, you were to all of them. But the one at the museum was very different. It was different. Every one was a little different. I thought.
Yeah.
Every one was a little different.
I thought there was a fair, reflection of diversity as far as age and race at them. There was really good discussion and ideas, but I don't know that we really got what we were looking for as far as the numbers.
And I attended the one just to add more comments, I attended the one at Little John, and some of the comments that I heard were that it's not accessible. You can't get to Nettles Park without a car. And so I think we all know that that's an issue. So that feeds into the Green Crescent Trail or the alternative transportation cat bus like we talked about before. And then the other issue that I heard was wanting green space, just more unprogrammed space, just a place to hang out, like Central Park or something in New York is just a green space to hang out. And so those are the comments that I heard.
And of course, there was a lady who wanted to build a pool.
And a pool.
Yeah.
So were these comments relayed to Kinley Horn?
They
Through
were. All of these notes were.
That's great. So y'all have done a great job. I didn't know what to expect when I went to it. I thought it was going to be another presentation by Kinley Horn. And so some people in the group had just shown up and they didn't know what the plans were, so they were kind of confused. But it was a good discussion nonetheless.
I have a quick question just to follow up on something. You mentioned the stories of the parks, and it just made me think about, do we have any interpretive signage in our parks?
Have any what?
Interpretive signage.
Very little.
The Shannon Sam's, is that what it's called now? Downtown with the Boy Scouts, they added some signs. I don't know if it's bridging it, but I don't know that I've seen any anywhere else.
Yeah, the only other one that I can think of is at the bioswale down at Nettles. There is plans for adding that to Toddy's because, and some of that would be sort of a stormwater. Some of it would be some biology and some of it would be history, because the 10th Street side was a pond. And Miss Hamilton, who used to live up on the hill, relayed this story to me about how the neighborhood used to fish and swim in that pond, and they had a little 2x4 that they would raise it up when the pond got a little low, and they would put it back down, and they had this whole system worked out with a pump and everything. It would be kind of cool to give a little bit of history of that, you know.
I was just thinking about, the request for the passive areas, which, once you kind of develop those, it's pretty maintained. It's not a program, but we do have maybe a missing link of connecting with some of the history that otherwise we don't really have much here. And I think we hear that Clemson and its issues of sense of place are certainly being disrupted with all the development. One way to maybe offset that would be to think about how we instill some of that in our parks. But it's often not the thing we think about, getting the funds to put in place. Signage can cost money if you want it done well and to last for some time. So I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, maybe not Nettles, we're so far along in that master plan, but just in general, maybe the idea that we need to start thinking about how we give more of that identity to the parks we have, and what ways we might want to go with either the Southbound PRT grants or something that might, because I think there's like park trail grants would cover some of that kind of stuff.
For sure.
It'd also add more than just having the pathway, benches, but now you've got sites to see.
The story,
Mm-hmm.
like the Clemson Park one, especially since that, the story of that being a legacy park and the first park, and how Clemson's park system came to be because of that park. We could even draw pictures. We've got 1,000 pictures there at the park that we could put of the old, having camp there, and just different things, and sort of tell that story around that trail. Nettles, it's not too late. There's a history there. There are families that lived on that property, and a whole history of that we could incorporate that into the naming of things, or telling a story through that park, because really that's kind of what's missing in that plan is that story. It's a great plan, but it just doesn't have that.
But I don't mean to be crass with it, but Kinley Horn's a big organization. They plan plenty of parks that look the same way in different places, topography aside, and it will, in that same way, look like the same park that you could be in anywhere USA until you start designing it with Clemson in mind. And what that is, I don't know, but how do you make sure that you don't lose that character?
I agree. That's something that when it starts coming down to the finer details, that we have to push for, because otherwise it could be cookie cutter or just homogenous. And to take something that's regional here, very specific, and put it into some design of that park would be, that's kind of the same thing with the Clemson Park. Taking a functional feature like a level spreader and making it an artistic feature in a park that is functional, and trying to move more towards that type of park design instead of just saying, "Oh, cool, you've got a great design there. Well, what more could it be that could, be our park and play into our community?" I think that is a great point.
How does that happen? What's the process of, how do you go about having them integrated?
Well, I would say you don't go completely underwater with what you're going to pay for just the base park. You got to remember, the identities and the details, and so making sure that you haven't completely burned out all your potential donors for big facility projects and left the details aside. So I think, when we talk about adopt a program or legacy, something else that we come back around to, those are ways in which you can really, or some communities have made some movement on that. But also just remembering that you have to spend some time going for those grants to get, that type of funding, which again is available, and it matters. It's just, in day-to-day business, it's not something that's going to be on your radar. So that's that's why it doesn't get done all the time.
Yeah, and having someone who is managing that project or eyes on that project and seeing when these things are designed, looking at those designs and saying, what else could we do? How much better could this be? What are some things that we could do? And it just takes someone, even in this department, who is looking at it constantly and being involved and just saying, hey, here's a detail that we can incorporate here. You know,
I
it
mean,
was, go ahead.
it definitely crosses over that bridge of like physical development to having to talk to your historians and your cultural institutions that are here to have the pictures and the documents. And that's a lot of work. I mean, in terms of really getting to what those multiple histories are for the area. And then of course, then there can be disagreement on what history is the history. And so, I mean, it takes a process. So yeah, I mean, having a lead champion is probably the best way to get that done for sure. But I don't know.
Having a champion in the Parks and Rec department or a champion for each park, or
I think in the Park and Recs department, because you could go on a larger scale, right? If you, we're working on a project that transcended just one park, maybe. And so, I don't know. I think it could go a lot of different directions, but I don't know. I don't know how you don't forget about it, but it's an important piece.
and I was looking at the comprehensive plan today as it applies to Parks and Rec and other areas. But one of the things, a big aspect of Parks and Rec in the comprehensive plan is the cultural component, and so it would tie together Parks and Rec. It's one of the requirements, but one of the objectives is to develop that sense of place, the stories, and telling the stories, incorporating art. So those are different facets, but definitely it's on the city. It's in the comprehensive plan, so it's just a matter of making it a responsibility of someone assigning it. In my opinion, this is what I've taken in. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. But it seems like if you assign it to give it a place so that it doesn't fall off the radar. I don't know the best way to do that, but.
Or we start to have specifications that include it in the design. That we have to have some sort of element that ties into the community, that ties into some kind of historical feature be included, public art being included or whatever. So it can just be built into those specifications. But I was going to say that very same thing that in the comprehensive plan, there's a cultural position that is supposed to be hired, and now with that integrating the art center into Parks and Rec, it just seems like a perfect fit. Start thinking about things like that and incorporating that art and culture and history into the design.
Any other thoughts about that? That made me think it would jump down, but the Parks and Plan Development, Tony, I guess I don't want to keep you here too long, but follow up on the Parks and Plan Development on 5D, the follow up.
Tony sent me the criteria. It's in my hands now.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it seems like this could be something to include in the specifications of the Parks and Plan Developments, to include something of this nature, to have a cultural element.
Right. I mean, yes, you could. Like, when you start talking about what have towns done with, like, downtown development, some would say, oh, you have to have a mural or some artistic. Maybe we even had something like that at one point. I don't know. But I think, like, for what you're putting together for the planned developments with neighborhood parks, I think might be different from if you want to go for some type of artistic component. And I guess to say, if you take whatever the planned development was that was out back behind Discipline, I don't remember the name. If you were to think about what would it look like if you were to ask them to bring in some type of cultural history or heritage, I don't know what that would look like, versus maybe things that could be in certain proximity to downtown or community parks and things like that. But I do think you could, and my question to you is going to be, how far are we down on the plan, like the criteria for plan development? You know, for example, right now you've got some specifications for acreage of the park, but could we also just say, or you could give X amount of dollars towards the Green Crescent Trail, lengthening out that system, or you could give this much money to some essential functions that go back into Parks and Rec that benefit the community as a whole. Are we past that point where that's a
I
possibility?
don't think so. No, that we're still working on it, you know,
Okay.
so I think we could include that with, you know, and even include maybe, instead of a design park, how about setting aside a sizable chunk of this property for conservation that could have a segment of Green Crescent Trail going through it.
Well, and I guess part of, you know, I did some background research, just looking again as I saw your document, what other places have done, and some have some really comprehensive neighborhood park planning. Greenville has a neighborhood park plan, although they aren't really very detailed about what that is exactly. But when I think about, again, where these plan developments are ultimately going to go and what makes sense, not all of them having a pocket park may make sense, but having conserved green space that has some type of easement on it into the future or something, that would make a huge difference.
It really would.
So, you know, if we have options that we see as equitable, whether it's, again, making our community walkable and bikeable and pedestrian friendly, or contributing to pockets of quality of life with the neighborhood parks, or simply green space, you might find that can better address all the different types of development that you're eventually going to have.
Yeah, I agree. We have a similar sort of funding apparatus, I guess you could call it, with our canopy requirement with plan developments. And if they can't meet the canopy requirement, they have to pay a certain fee per tree that they're not going to be able to put back. That money goes into a fund which I can use to plant those trees elsewhere throughout the city. Or I can use them for tree giveaways, or I can use them for different things that will, you know, keep the canopy going.
I think about, I know the Grange may not be in our zone, but I think about kind of the impact that that development has off of 123 that is very noticeable from the road, and also in my neighborhood at least, you know, led to one displaced black bear that was looking for a new home, and so we know that had tremendous impact on a lot of things, and there's nothing to prevent that from happening again within city limits, I guess, unless you have a canopy policy.
Yeah.
That would be very proactive.
At some point, we're going to have to face that, some sort of requirement for some conservation instead of just being a moonscape development that just displaces our communal wildlife, our trees, our habitat.
Well, I know a lot of people, you know, think about the experimental forest as creating some balance around that, but I also think about how important canopy is to just, again, what this looks like. If y'all had not put the trees right here, you'd be looking at the highway, right? What, outside of, you know, preventing the erosion that would eventually come, you know, trees serve other aesthetic qualities as well, so.
Yeah, and I mean, we are a little bit spoiled by that experimental forest, and we think that we're sheltered by it. There are plenty of trees, but you can have some very unhealthy pockets in your city that are not very big, but they're very unhealthy. And your downtown being one of them, particularly during periods of development. There's nothing there to sequester that debris or that carbon. You know, you see the traffic going on outside of our window here. There's nothing to mitigate that. And we continue to do developments and plant 30-foot, 10-foot trees and get rid of these large 80-foot, 100-foot trees that are really doing the work for stormwater mitigation. we can have an unhealthy situation in our town. And there are plenty of towns around the country that are well documented for that same thing. And they're having to spend a lot of time and money, Chattanooga being one of them, to replant their canopy and get their economic growth kickstarted. So,
Well, Chattanooga is a good example of a community that has embraced a sustainable, like post-industrial life into a more sustainable plan, and they actually have a marketing plan based on that now, becoming a thriving destination because of it too.
see, it has a $sign beside it if that's what's important to you. You can put that $sign beside it. It's very easy to research it and see the benefits. But I just would hate to see, something, us continue to head towards some sort of devastating loss of what gives us character and health and vitality in our community. I love those ideas.
A lot of those are mentioned in the city comprehensive plan. I highly encourage everyone, if you haven't looked, I think as our job as a committee, we need to look at these because it's the city's objectives for Parks and Rec department, in addition to the vision for the city, but these are things that they want Parks and Rec to look at, and they're very specific on these things. And planning a green team, I forget what they called it, a green, is one of those aspects, and they put in our Parks and Rec to do this. And so as an advisory committee, we need to be keeping that on our radar too, as we're helping making recommendations. So this is a priority for our city's future, talking about master planning, the way your city's gonna look. I think it's one thing that doesn't necessarily have a voice, but it affects everything. It kind of underlies the whole quality of life here, and I think that's one thing that needs to be on our radar. So if y'all will make sure you take a look at the comprehensive plan if you haven't yet. And there's a lot of things to see how we, as a committee, can support the department to be able to take steps to address these issues. So thank you for the updates on the parks and plan developments and bringing up something important. It's a big part of making Clemson what Clemson is. And looking at the vision, sustainability, it's part of the city's vision. So something I think we have a couple of big topics that have just come up, looking at this aspect, and also the stories in our parks, the legacy. So we're all making a big impact on the legacy of our city just by being here and having this conversation. So hopefully we can put a plan into action and not just words. So any questions thank you, Lauren, for the great questions and research that you share. There are actions from that discussion. So I've kind of jumped around. We've kind of skimmed through the whole long-range planning. So we've kind of jumped around. We talked, any questions on Kinley Horn, Nettles Park? Nope. Programs, okay, we skipped the B, we'll come right back to B. City of Clemson Comprehensive Plan, it's come up in this last discussion. That was my point in putting on the agenda, just to encourage, to request that you all please take a look at that, and then to see how we can address that, or if there's certain actions that we need to take as a committee or as a department, how we can support you. So to be honest, I just looked at it recently, so it's helpful to look at what we're doing here. And so any other comments on the comprehensive plan? Okay. And Tony sent it back in June. We can resend it back out if you don't know where that is, if you've lost track of it. Yeah. Does anyone? Yeah, I'll resend it. Tony, you can I'll do it because I've got a file. And then, so that's that. We talked about the criteria for parks and plan developments. Lauren, you've got a copy of it, and you're reviewing it. Because last I had that there was going to be a Google Doc with feedback, but y'all are looking at that together.
We're old school, it's just email or doc.
All right, y'all got it under control. Awesome. I think I love the idea to be able to protect green spaces and give those options, Lauren, like you mentioned, because to protect the tree canopy, have green spaces, it's less maintenance for the department, it's a need for the city. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for looking at that and proposing those ideas. All right. Any questions about the criteria and plan development? No. All right. Then the last issue that we skipped over here in long range and master plans was program and athletic evaluations and groundwork for future parks master plan.
I've got our, these are, well, Christie just worked up, she's been working on this for 2 days. This was our last year's revenues and expenses that we had talked about at our last meeting. I know it's a lot to look over right now, but you're, my glass bottle. The revenues were down because of we didn't have summer camp last July and week in August. And then as you can see, we didn't have the numbers were down in some sports because of COVID. And then under expenses, these are our new accounts that we have been created. But with the lack of camp, we did not spend for those 5 weeks of camp also. So we didn't have expenses, and our total budget, we were $133,000 under budget last year. So that was our total, and the far right column tells you the percentage that we were under. So that's just some tough for y'all to look over. And the tornado damage and all of the emergency trees that Tony had to remove, he was slightly over budget, but with emergency, the tree removals, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, you can't really predict it.
Right, no.
Try to put the best numbers you can out there.
Right, I mean,
So Lindsay had mentioned increasing salaries for camp staff next summer. Is that going to be an issue for her, or will she be able to?
that will be put in the new budget next year because of the hardship that she had this year. She had some people work 1 or 2 weeks and quit because they weren't getting paid enough. And the reason that wasn't in the new budget is she had never had that happen before. So she did not anticipate that happening, but it will be, I think, our goal is to go to $10 an hour for all the employees. So next year, the revenues should be back up at a normal rate. But anyway, and y'all had asked for this report, so I mean, meeting.
It was earlier than I was expecting. I didn't think we were gonna talk about this until later, and that wasn't what I was referring to in the agenda, so this is, thank you for all of
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Christie's the one who did it all.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Christy. I had a question. Is there, like, I haven't looked at the budget thoroughly. Do you have discretionary funds, like if there's a project that comes up that you need to spend funds on, like,
Not
it's all budget items specifically, there's not a discretionary
Normally.
fund for,
Yes, ma'am.
I should need them. Yeah. I just didn't.
Yes, ma'am.
We can maybe take a closer look at this at home
Sure,
in the
sure,
next
sure,
meeting.
yeah.
Ask
Sure.
questions, or we can email if you have questions.
Sure, yeah.
Trying to take it all in right now. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Christy, for getting this to us. That was another one of our duties that wasn't listed in this agenda, is to review the fiscal year end summary. So Jay, this is from 20 to 21, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions for Jay? Discussion?
The new accounts that were added on here were added on June or July, and it was right at the time we were working on the new budget. So next year's will look completely different than these.
Great. So detailed. What a shift for y'all to have to make that transition. Long term will be helpful, but wow, y'all have had quite a year. Quite a year in Parks and Rec. Lots of big projects. All right, so no comments or questions? We can look at this and email questions or discuss it next meeting. The other point that I had here on B was the program athletics evaluations. This was specific, it was a little different. Like Lindsay, what I had in mind in putting this on the agenda was with Lindsay sent the evaluations for the Camp Clemson. So to have program evaluations and have athletics evaluations. Jay, I didn't see one for soccer. Do you send out like Lindsay did for Camp Clemson, like parent surveys?
No, I mean, that's a good idea to begin that.
I think it would be helpful. Well, it seems like Lindsay gets a lot of information from doing these surveys, so that would be helpful. And then also thinking about the parks plan for next year. I think there might be some other questions too that we can ask that might give us more information that we need. That would be helpful when they're doing the parks. If they're doing a parks master plan. Lauren and I were talking a little bit about it, like to address some of the programs, how they find out about programs, so that we can look at. Do you remember, Lauren? Would you speak more to that?
Well, if this is what you're talking about, one of the things that we talked about was, satisfaction surveys are always good. You get information about that specific sport and things that are pertinent to making and improving it. One thing that, when we start talking about like what's missing, like programs that aren't happening, but maybe there's interest in, it's always difficult to hear from people that you aren't engaging with. And while like a full needs assessment could be done, one other consideration could be that you might actually capture more people in the registration process. Like I know I registered my daughter for soccer, Google form, and in terms of adding on, maybe 4 or 5 questions of like bigger, broader interest might be one way to capture an audience who, they aren't. I mean, like your response rate is going to be fantastic because they're all registering their kid, but it could be about what programming is missing. Like you could ask some kind of leading questions about, what would you like to see that maybe isn't? I know you're saying get up for soccer, but you might actually get some interesting perspectives in a way that they also may not hold you accountable if you don't deliver on what you put down. That's always the scares. If you ask them what they want, then there's an expectation that you might deliver it. But if you do it in a registration process, you might actually kind of skirt those feelings. But just thinking about 4 or 5 like core-based questions that you could put in every registration you have that might be answerable to these broader like things you'd like to see, and that doesn't even. I mean, that could also look at things like a amount of engagement in park settings. I mean, it could be a lot of really useful planning information. And I don't really have like those questions in mind, other than we always know that we miss those that we miss, but we don't know how to connect with them. And we'd still not get those people then, but maybe we'd start hearing like, well, I'm doing this, but I would really, me and my friends would really like to see XYZ or whatever. But, I don't know, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Thank you. You spoke very, yeah. So, is there a way, is Lindsay well, I guess each program, do they create their own registration form? Like for soccer, you create the registration form? Yeah. Is there a way to Lauren, could you brainstorm a list, or does anyone know those kinds of questions? To brainstorm a list Jay, would you be open to including those questions in the registration
Yeah,
forms?
we have added programs and events from the public. I mean, requesting it, what we didn't offer, but we just heard that from word of mouth. We didn't have surveys. I know that Nancy just put out a survey on what to do with Halloween and Christmas. I mean, and it's
Yeah, you don't want to bombard people with too many surveys. I don't know if that's what you're
Right.
doing now. I think it's wonderful to do it, but if people are registering for a sport, they've already got something to go into.
well,
And if we can,
and we're hoping to be using our new system by October, when we register for basketball. We're not sure if it is, so we're gonna be in like a transition to the first sport we offer, but the more we learn about that new system, the more we can integrate something like that.
And I would just say it should be short, like
Right.
not a lot of questions to add
Right.
into the process, but just maybe a couple of really informative questions that, could really give some insight and, can standardize them across all the sports, and so it doesn't feel like it's aimed towards one group, but just,
Sure.
I don't know, you might be able to get some really interesting perspectives, not just about like what the needs are, but, I don't know what it could be, but I guess it's one of those, like, start collecting some data now, you might find it useful in the future kind of things.
Well, one thing to consider too, like with this, I don't know what the questions are, depending on what they are, though, you might even be able to add them to registration for things like Camp Clemson or this drop-in shop, right? Like the kids who are playing sports, there may be overlap, but it may be different, right? Like if my kid doesn't like sport, I'm not signing up for soccer, but I need a day off or a night to shop, I'm dropping them at this thing, and so maybe it doesn't make sense to ask and drop-in shop what sports they are interested in. Something like that, but depending on the breadth of the question, you could even maybe widen your sample of perspectives you're pulling. You're not just putting it only the sport registration.
yeah, all registrations, all programs, not just sports, right?
I guess then in all of this, you run the risk of having the same people fill out multiple times, but
I mean, and there's other ways you can take the questions too. So like if you want to be able to demonstrate the value of parks, you could ask a question that is, how much time do you spend in the parks? How often do you visit the parks? And if you're able to, have that 80% of our population within the city visits a park at least once every 3 months or whatever that might be. I mean, those are the kinds of things that would also then probably give you more fuel for those grants and for any other funding requests you might throw at the city. So, just again, those questions could be anything to demonstrate value, importance, need. I don't know. I mean, sky's the limit, but now's the time to ask. It's about, in terms of getting that information, so you have it when you need it.
I think there's some experts in the field here that would probably have a good idea of those kinds of questions to see the bigger. I think like you mentioned parks, I hadn't even thought about parks to put that in the registration for an athletics but parks are one of those things that that was just an example. So it's good to have a lot of input on the kinds of questions that you're adding to the registration form. What's the best way to go forward with it, or do we brainstorm a list, have someone brainstorm a list?
So the next registration is basketball, that's October.
October.
Should we?
I mean, that could be a target goal, if not, you could look towards spring. I mean, and again, starting a list, yeah, I would say just drafting some ideas of what would be the important things you might want to find out about.
Okay. Do you have any, I guess we could look at the comprehensive plan to look at those, or the important things that we need to look at to question, to ask questions about.
Yeah, I mean, you could also look back probably to even the city's mission and values, like we're asked, to assess the thing, but that's not good, but we had that survey to fill out, and it pointed us back to the city's mission and how the Parks and Rec department fits within that, so I think lots of ways we can, right, I mean, if we're brainstorming a list, right, then we can focus in.
Awesome. Is anyone volunteer to start the brainstorm list of questions? We've got a couple here, so we can just type them in a document and share it with everyone.
I mean, are we just looking to Google that here?
I think so, right? If it's a brainstorm list, that way they're all in one place, you don't have to scroll through emails. Yeah,
Sounds like good.
sounds like a good idea.
I mean, I could create a Google Doc, but we're definitely going to need you to put your questions at the top because they're better than mine.
You've got some right there. Think about tying into the values and the mission, that's the important thing. And if we all look at the comprehensive plan, look at the city's vision and mission statement is on their homepage, so you can see that right away, and Parks and Rec ties right into at least 3 of them, so, thank you, Ms. Warren, for getting that started. We'll be on the lookout for that. Thank you. Awesome. Any other questions or comments about, I put it evaluations, the proper title probably would have been surveys, I suppose. No more questions? No more discussion? All right, let's move on to the other matters assigned by director. The first A is Assistant City Administrator Search Committee member. The city is is going through a hiring process to hire a new assistant city administrator. And so, Jay, can you talk? Do you know
Well,
much about that?
I was asked by Andy at our next meeting for this committee to elect a representative to serve on that committee. I don't have any dates but, need to elect a representative to serve on that committee.
I nominate Carrie.
I'm happy to do it. I got to participate in the hiring committee for Andy, the administrator, and enjoy the process, but if somebody else would like to, I'm open to
I say, you did Andy, right?
Uh-huh.
I did Shannon.
Uh-huh.
So somebody else.
I'll second to Carrie. I don't have the capacity to sit on that at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what my schedule will be.
It's all you.
That's on me.
Yep.
Is there a motion to
elect you.
elect me as the representative for the search committee?
I'm so moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Is there a debate, questions, comments? Okay, so I will be the search committee representative.
I'll let Andy
Great.
know.
And I assume that they'll send out the position description and everything so that we know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. All right, that's it for that section. The next point B is Fall Clemson Community Connection article. It was just an update. I read that I wrote the article for the fall. I focused on our volunteer efforts, so the tennis program was fantastic. I really enjoyed talking to Mike, who offered the program. It was so cool. He started playing tennis. He played tennis professionally. He started with a community, a Parks and Rec free program. So here he is. He's retired from his professional career, and he's offering it just kind of full circle. So maybe one of our Clemson participants will be playing professionally someday. I really enjoyed talking with him, and I wrote the article about that. I also wrote one about, I guess I don't have to tell you because y'all read this article, but it was really fun to talk about all of our volunteers, 12 Mile, and then Friends of the Park. I did a thing on that. Do you all want me to send you that? I feel like I'm bombarding your emails. Is it helpful for me to send you those?
I mean, I don't mind like editing and surviving it.
All right, I'll keep sending those. I don't want to put too much in your inbox, but it's helpful to see what's going on. And I thought about repurposing those articles because I've written them once, but maybe once they're published, we could do sections and put them on the Facebook page or something like that, so that it's not just a one and done. Because not everyone sees the Clemson Community Connection magazine, so maybe we can repurpose that. So all right. And then I was looking at the comprehensive plan, and there's a big piece about environmental education. They didn't use that terminology, but it'd be helpful to do some knowledge about sustainability and some articles about that at some point too. No end for topics, but the winter will be the next one. That was all I was going to say on that. Any questions? All right, the next point, we're on to the new business. The first thing that I didn't put on here because it's come about since, one of our other duties as the committee members is to evaluate the director, to evaluate Jay, and Sarah Wickham sent out an email. Did anyone not get Sarah's email to evaluate? No, I think the deadline is September 1st. So if you can go ahead and do that by September 1st. So that was another one of our duties that we're meeting here. The other new business I wanted to add, it's also come up since I wrote this last week. The Green Crescent Trail, there's a lot going on with the Green Crescent Trail. There's a lot of motion that's finally happened. It's been a lot going on for years and years, but there's a little bit more momentum. And first sections are finally, well, the bridge is on the ground, but there's more sections that are going to be on the ground soon. So Chad, my husband Chad Carson's the chair of the Friends of the Green Crescent, and so they did a webinar last night. And so there's a YouTube channel for Green Crescent Trail I can share with you, but they're going to have the recording of that just to give an update on what's going on with the Green Crescent Trail. And so it definitely plays into Parks and Rec because it's a park facility, and so I'm wondering if we can add the Green Crescent Trail to add it to the city website so that there's updates on the Green Crescent Trail, because especially as it gets on the ground. So, and then as we,
Probably be a Lowell.
a Lowell thing, okay, just as a link, and then it can go to theirs, like the updates and things like that. I wonder if it would be helpful to have with the facilities and equipment and supplies to have a short Green Crescent Trail update for future meetings if there's things or updates that come about. So I'm involved. I'm a volunteer with Green Crescent Trail, and so I can do updates like that if need be. Wear a couple hats. I just want to mention that, and I can share that video with you all to see if you're interested in what's going on with Green Crescent Trail. So, Tony is knows a lot of what's going on, but so it's and I'll share that with you. All right. Other new business. There is a meeting Tuesday, October 12th. That's our next meeting. It's going to be the Kinley Horn presentation. The format, the location is to be decided.
Right.
I am going to be out of town, and I won't be no computer access. So Bill is going to lead that meeting. And so, will we have a quorum? Does everyone else change the date? Is there any other conflict?
That's in the fall break. I will do my best to be back.
Okay. It's a Tuesday, so it's in here. Okay.
In the fall break.
Okay. So, if you see any conflicts, Peter and Renee will. So, if you see any issues, just let us and Jay know. Okay, we all make it.
Great. Yeah. We didn't have a choice on that.
Sure, that makes sense. Of course, they were planning on it in August. So.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's
it's
exactly
an
right.
extension. So I'm guessing it will be. Will it be recorded like our normal meetings are? Do you know?
If it's a virtual, yes,
Okay.
but they will record it off.
We can tune in
Yes.
if we're not at the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other new business?
I'd like to just, just give the word congratulate or recognize Jay for putting together the opening ceremonies and Lauren was there with me on there. And then the little closing celebration was all very good, and just Lauren was there with me on that. And I thought they all did, whoever your committee is that plans all that, I don't know who all but thank you for that. They all did a great job with both of them. And we appreciate y'all's work on that. Yeah, that was very special for those kids. It's a it's a big deal. I mean, for them to win that, to go that far, because I've never, I'm watching the Little League World Series on TV right now, and it's big for those kids. And I can imagine this is pretty good too. And I wish it could be on ESPN too, and then, so we could see it all. Because I would have loved to see some of that, because I heard they were very good. But thank you, Jay, and your group that put all that together, both ends of it. And Lauren, thank you.
Well, something that was, if you have the resources locally, you need to tap into them, like the open ceremonies. We're, fortunate enough to have some of our coaches are working the athletic part, and we had to go through compliance, fill out forms and all. We were originally the Bill Spiders, who played in the major leagues for 13 years and was a league president in Dixie Youth. That he's an assistant football coach. He was also going to speak to the kids, but it was a dead period in football recruiting, so he could not speak. But Coach Lee was able, and he came back early from a Board of Trustees event. We talked to the kids.
He did a great job too. He was good.
Appreciate what he did too.
Yes, thank you, Jay. It's so exciting to see all the collaborations happening. There's so many things that go on. You can't all be at all of them, so thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, and just the tournament itself here in Clemson was very well attended. It was a great event, and it was run well by everyone involved, and both Central and Clemson put it together, and y'all did a great job of running the tournament. I was standing back there just being me, and several parents from other teams came by me and wondered why they picked me to tell me how great things were, and so I'll pass that to Jay and them too. That those parents, looked at me. I guess I looked like somebody they could talk to, or whatever. And they were elderly too. So they were senior citizens. They came by and said how great everything was, and so they did. It was a really good tournament. Exciting tournament here. So.
But they say that when the games that Bill attended, he stood in the same place.
And I think it didn't help that Kevin gave me this pass that said VIP on it. And for why I don't.
But he said, this is not good luck place.
Yeah, it was a good luck place. I said the same place for all three games. All the games for Clemson.
He did.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Is there any other new business to bring up? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Lisa made a motion. Is there a second? All right. There's been a first and a second motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there any debate, discussions, comments? No? Okay. So I'm restating the motion to adjourn the meeting. Any affirmative votes?
Yes.
All right. The meeting has been adjourned at 7:30.